Can a US president be blocked from ever running for office again? Does impeachment automatically do this? What about censure instead of impeachment? Can this keep someone like a one-term president like Donald Trump from running again in the future? Can an impeachment happen after a president is no longer in office? There's been a lot of talk about this, but not very much clarity. So what is the truth about impeachment, censure, and what can happen to a public official in such cases? Stick around and we'll take a look beyond the noise to find out. This channel covers a lot of topics, including questions like, what happens when millions of people believe that God decided Trump would get a second term, and that doesn't work out? So before we jump in, please hit like and subscribe so you can check out my other videos on things like the Trump prophecies. This poor doctoral student will appreciate it. Let's go. On January 6th, 2021, America experienced one of the most historic moments of unrest as supporters of Donald Trump violently broke through security at the nation's Capitol building, forcing the entire legislature to be rushed into a hidden secured location. Some died, and many others were injured in the attack. One of the main questions that emerged in the aftermath was whether or not the sitting president, Donald J. Trump, was responsible for what had taken place. In a videotaped message, Trump condemned the violence but did not take any responsibility. In that message, he did finally acknowledge that he consented to a smooth transition of power to Joe Biden. He did this without conceding that he lost the election, which was a major factor in why his supporters rioted in the Capitol. Furthermore, he ended his video with the words, "We are just getting started." This, along with many other statements made just before the attack on January 6th, caused even some of his biggest supporters to acknowledge that his rhetoric may have caused the event itself. Now, with just 2 weeks before the new president was to be sworn in, the legislature was faced with questions about what should be done, if anything, about the role Trump and other politicians, such as Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, played in the violence on that day in Washington, D.C. With just days left, what would be the purpose in Congress going forward with impeachment? If successful, the removal of the president would also require a 2/3 majority vote in the Senate, followed by a separate simple majority vote for the removal itself. Also on the table would be the measure of preventing the president from ever holding public office again. Many legislators, some who had previously supported the president, agreed that Donald Trump did bear at least some responsibility for the January 6th attack, but many opposed the idea of impeachment itself as the solution. Republican Congresswoman and Trump supporter, Representative Nancy Mace, went on several TV networks speaking out against Trump's rhetoric. However, she also claimed that impeachment would be harmful to the nation in that it would further divide the people. Donald Trump himself echoed this exact statement on January 12th in his first media appearance since the attack. Mace argued that instead of seeking impeachment, she would support a bipartisan effort to initiate a censure of the president. But here is what we know. Censure does not prevent those from holding public office in the future. According to the Congressional Censure CRS report, the adoption of a simple or concurrent resolution expressing the House's or the Senate's censure, condemnation, or no confidence in a particular officer of the federal government does not have any immediate or binding legal import, but does express a particular moral judgment and may have both symbolic as well as political implications. So to be clear, censure is a symbolic act with no legal ramifications. What is not clear is how a censure might be used in any future litigation against a public official. So if the primary concern is to prevent a public official like Donald Trump from holding a public office again, censure is not effective in this regard, as those like Representative Nancy Mace might insinuate. This brings us back to impeachment itself, and this is an issue that many Americans still do not have a good understanding of. Time magazine put out a good article on this, which you can find in the description of this video. It explains that in a case like that of Donald Trump, the Constitution explicitly says that the Senate could, with a conviction, prevent him from ever holding office again. The article states that Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution specifies that a president must be removed from office if he is convicted in an impeachment trial. The president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and the conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. That's what the document says. So while this can happen, there are a few things that need to happen first. Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution says that the Senate holds the power to convict a president and remove him from office, and must do so with a 2/3 majority vote. They can also choose to vote on disqualifying him to hold office in the future, but only if he is first convicted in the Senate. The impeachment and removal itself requires a 2/3 vote in the Senate, but here is where it gets a little bit fuzzy. There is some dispute about what the voting requirements are for disqualification for holding future office. Some sources say that only a majority vote is required for this part, while others state that it is not clear if a 2/3 majority would do the trick. The Constitution itself doesn't prescribe a 2/3 majority vote for that specific thing. And in the past, the Senate has used a simple majority for disqualification, but this has happened only 3 times in history, and all of those were judges, not presidents. So, we know that censure is not effective itself to prevent someone like Donald Trump from running for office again. We know that in order for an impeachment to do this, the president would first need to be impeached in the House, convicted in the Senate, and then a separate vote would be required to disqualify him or her from public office in the future. So in President Trump's case, this would mean that 67 senators would have to vote to convict him. That means all the Democratic senators and at least 17 Republicans. Michael Gerhardt, professor of jurisprudence at the University of North Carolina School of Law, says that the special penalties upon conviction and impeachment are designed to protect the republic from the very type of people who have abused public office in such a grave manner that they should never have the opportunity to be entrusted with public power again. But what about after the president is out of office? Can impeachment still happen? Professor Gerhardt also said that being president is not a safe harbor from political and legal accountability. This is why John Quincy Adams proclaimed on the floor of the House that I hold myself, so long as I have breath of life in my body, amenable to impeachment by this House for everything I did during the time I held public office. Adams' suggestion is that any impeachable official remains subject to that process well after they left office. Not just presidents, but those who abused power while in office. So in theory, yes, a public official can be impeached after they leave office. Now, we have not discussed all of the consequences of what can happen if a conviction is achieved. For our purposes here, we are simply considering how someone like a President Trump could be prevented from holding office in the future. And in this case, Senator Nancy Pelosi sought impeachment for Trump according to the following resolution that says, President Trump gravely endangered the security of the United States and its institutions of government. He threatened the integrity of the democratic system, interfered with the peaceful transition of power, and imperiled a coordinate branch of government. He thereby betrayed his trust as president to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. The language in this resolution brings up another remote but theoretically possible scenario. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution says that a person cannot hold office if they've engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States, unless 2/3 of both chambers of Congress vote to allow it. This came out of the post-Civil War period and is basically intended to keep Confederates out of office. So while there were indeed Confederate flags flying among the Trump supporters in the U.S. Capitol attacks on January 6, 2021, just as they were seen at virtually any Trump rally event, it might be a stretch for lawmakers to make the direct connection. Well, it isn't a stretch for me, but for the sake of argument, Congress would probably need to write a new amendment for Trumpism, and that might not be such a bad idea. Speaking of my ideas, as of this recording date, Congress is right in the middle of impeachment hearings. I reject the notions that impeachment of Donald Trump should not be pursued because it might further divide the country. I have stated in other videos that there is no rationalizing with people who still vow to support Trumpism to the end. Republicans like Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz have doubled down on their same rhetoric that ignited the historic violence in the nation's capital in the first place. And for those Republican politicians who have recanted their support of Trump and acknowledged the wrongdoing, they have a moral obligation to do something I reject the notions of Representative Nancy Mace, who believes that censure is all that should be pursued. Her measures do two things: allow Trump supporters such as herself to give symbolic distancing from the violent attacks, while still leaving the door open for Trump to run again in 2024. But perhaps it's time to make a deal. So in this video, I talked about Nancy Mace, who's a freshman congresswoman from South Carolina. I could have just as easily talked about the many other traditional politicians who were Trump supporters and now trying to back off without really doing much about what had just happened. So the only deal I think should be proposed to Republicans at this point is some sort of real bipartisan compromise in which we can be assured that Donald Trump will never set foot in the White House again. Clearly, even as of today, in January 12th, he is still signaling to the far right to continue to contest the election. So this isn't just about getting revenge or anything like that. This is realizing that we are not out of the woods yet. As of this taping, we have two significant dates that are coming up. The FBI has already warned that there are many threats of violence across the country at different capitals. So we are clearly dealing with something different than just your status quo disgruntled voter. This has gone far beyond that. And so the measures that need to be taken, if we are to take Republicans seriously on this matter, that have to go a little further than what they've been talking so far. Now is not the time to be making false conflations about BLM protests over the summer and the like. But of course, this is the world of politics, and we're going to talk about leveraging. Meanwhile, Senator Josh Hawley is out there talking about his book being dropped from Simon & Schuster rather than all this other stuff that's been going on. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you subscribe to my YouTube channel and also tune into the Proximity Portal wherever you get podcasts. And be sure to look for a lot of new videos that I'm starting to produce based on the research I'm doing on patriotic education, master narratives, and so much more. This is Avi Penhollow. You can find more about me at avipenhollow.com. Thanks for watching.